The forest slept under a sky that looked wounded. The moon was red, not the color of love, but of blood drying on steel. Wind moved through the trees like whispers of the dead. Lady Victoria Gravesend, the last vampire of Hollowveil, walked through the fog with a silence that could frighten the night itself. Her eyes, dark crimson, caught every shadow. She moved like something that had forgotten what warmth was. For 3 nights she had not fed. Hunger clawed at her throat, but she was not hunting blood tonight. Something else had called her, something small, weak, and crying. A sound came again. A short, sharp whimper that sliced the silence like glass. Victoria turned her head slowly. Her long black hair brushed the wind, and her lips parted slightly, not from breath, for she had none, but from instinct. She followed the sound deeper into the forest. The mist grew thick. The trees seemed to lean closer, watching her. The ground was soft with rot, and each step released the faint smell of decay. Then she saw it. A white wolf pup, trapped in a metal snare, twisting helplessly. Blood soaked its small paw and painted the snow black under the red moonlight. The scent of blood struck her like a blade. Her fangs ached. A low hiss escaped her throat. Every fiber of her being screamed, "Feed." But when the creature looked up, she stopped. Its golden eyes were filled with pain, but there was something else, a strange calm, as if it knew her, as if it was not afraid. For a moment, the forest grew absolutely silent. Even the wind held its breath. Victoria knelt beside it. Her hand hovered over the trap. The metal gleamed wet in the moonlight, and the smell of rust and blood mixed in the air. "Quiet now," she whispered. Her voice was low, soft, and ancient. She gripped the iron with cold fingers and twisted. The trap snapped open with a sound like bones breaking. The pup collapsed into her arms. Its heartbeat was fast, fragile, alive. Victoria stared down at the creature. Its fur glowed faintly in the red light, too bright, too pure for this cursed place. And then, slowly, the pup licked her hand. For a creature of death, that warmth was unbearable. Her dead veins seemed to stir. She shivered not from fear, but from the strange pain of feeling alive again. The pup's eyes fluttered shut. It slept. Victoria wrapped it in her cloak and stood. Behind her, something moved. The sound was low, heavy, distant. A crunch of enormous footsteps in the snow. The forest seemed to twist and breathe as if waking from a long sleep. She turned her head slightly, eyes narrowing into the fog. There was nothing there, but the scent of ancient earth and iron filled the air. The trees whispered her name, not in welcome, but in warning. Victoria walked on, carrying the small creature through the mist. The red moon followed above like a bloodshot eye that refused to blink. Far behind her, deep within the woods, something enormous drew its first breath in centuries. The ground trembled softly, and a single word rumbled through the dark. "Mine." The castle waited at the edge of the forest, silent, ancient, and alive in its own way. Hollowveil was built of black stone that drank the moonlight. Its towers leaned like broken teeth. No candle burned inside, yet faint red glows moved behind its windows, as if shadows themselves were walking. Lady Victoria Gravesend carried the white pup in her arms. The creature slept, its breath weak and shallow. The forest behind her groaned like a dying animal, and she did not look back. She pushed open the great iron gate. It screamed on its hinges, a long cry that echoed through the empty halls. Inside, cold air pressed against her skin. The torches along the walls flared to life, though no hand had touched them. Firelight painted long, crawling shapes across the floor. She walked down the corridor. The sound of her boots against stone was followed by another sound, the faint click of footsteps that did not belong to her. She stopped. The sound stopped. When she moved again, it followed. The castle was breathing. Victoria reached the great hall. The ceiling was high and lost in shadow. Her throne of cracked marble stood before the dying fire. She laid the pup beside it and covered it with her cloak. For a moment, peace. Only the fire crackled. Then a faint drip, drip, drip echoed from somewhere above. She lifted her gaze. From a crack in the ceiling, something wet fell thick and dark. Blood. A bat dropped suddenly from the rafters, screeching, wings twisted and broken. It hit the ground and began to crawl toward the fire, leaving a trail of red behind it. Victoria did not move. She only whispered, "The forest has followed me." The pup stirred, letting out a small whine. The fire shuddered and almost died. Then a gust of icy air filled the hall, and with it came a smell, soil, stone, and something older. Outside, thunder rolled once deep and slow. The castle's windows rattled. Dust rained from the roof. Victoria turned toward the doors. Her eyes glowed brighter, red reflections burning across the walls. Something large was moving beyond the gates. Heavy, steady, each step a dull heartbeat. The pup woke, ears twitching. It limped toward her, trembling, golden eyes wide with fear. Victoria knelt. "Stay," she whispered. But her voice wavered not from fear, but from the cold certainty that what came was not alive. The sound grew closer. The walls shook. The fire went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Then, boom, the gates exploded inward. Dust filled the air. Torches along the walls went out, one by one, as if choked by invisible hands. Through the smoke stepped something tall. Its shape bent the shadows. Its eyes burned orange through the dust. It carried a broken chain in one hand, and in the other a twisted piece of metal that still smelled of blood. Its voice rolled through the hall like thunder through a graveyard. "Vampire." Victoria did not blink. "Speak your curse. You took what was mine." Her eyes narrowed. The creature was dying. It was meant to. The ground trembled beneath her feet. The giant moved closer. Its skin was stone, its breath fire. The smell of ash filled the hall. The pup whimpered. Victoria straightened. "You are not welcome in Hollowveil. Then your walls will break before I leave." She raised her hand, and the torches burst into flame. The air crackled, shadows twisted like living things. "Leave," she said, "or join the forest in its grave." The giant bent low, his molten eyes inches from her face. "We shall see who burns first." Lightning split the sky outside, and the hall filled with blinding red light. The white pup howled a small, echoing cry that shook the air, and in that moment, something ancient woke again beneath the castle floor. The doors of Hollowveil crashed shut behind the giant, with a scream of bending metal. The impact sent a rain of dust down from the high ceiling, and cracks spread across the walls like veins. Lady Victoria Gravesend stood still in the middle of the great hall. Her pale face showed no fear, only the cold stillness of a predator waiting to strike. The white wolf pup pressed against her boots, trembling. The creature that filled her doorway was not made for the world of the living. Its body was built from boulders held together by veins of molten fire. Each step it took left a black scorch on the floor. Its mouth was a cave full of smoke. "You cannot hide her, vampire," the thing said. "That cub carries an oath of blood. Her breath belongs to the mountain." Victoria's eyes flashed red. Then the mountain should come and take her itself. The air turned heavy. The torches along the walls flared brighter, feeding on the tension. The giant drew in a long, shuddering breath that sounded like the grind of stone. When he exhaled, the heat was strong enough to make the banners on the walls curl and blacken. He swung his arm, a blow meant to crush. Victoria moved faster than sight. The wind of her movement ripped the ash from the floor. She landed behind him, cloak twisting through the smoke. Her claws sliced across his back, sparks flying where flesh met stone. The giant roared. The windows shattered. Somewhere deep within the castle, bells began to ring on their own. He turned, his massive hand sweeping through the air. It caught her mid-flight and threw her against a column. The marble cracked, sending echoes down the corridors like screams. The pup yelped. Its eyes flared gold for an instant. The golden light ran across the floor in thin lines runes carved by something ancient. Victoria staggered to her feet. The taste of blood filled her mouth. It was her own, black and cold. She stared at the glowing symbols spreading beneath the pup. "No," she hissed. "Not again." The giant froze, watching the runes crawl toward him like living fire. The lines reached his feet and burst upward in a tower of light. He howled. His skin cracked, smoke pouring from his wounds. But he laughed too, a broken, echoing laugh that made the torches die. "She is waking," he said. "The child of the old gods. You cannot stop her." Victoria moved forward, her face streaked with dust and blood. "If she wakes in my hall," she said, "then your god will find no world left to rule." She drove her hand into his chest. The sound was like metal splitting stone. Fire spilled out, white and red. The creature stumbled, its voice a storm. "This is not victory," it gasped. "This is invitation." Then it fell. The ground shook as it hit the floor. Cracks raced up the walls. The ceiling groaned as if the whole castle were alive and in pain. Victoria stood over the remains. They were already turning to ash. The smell of burning rock mixed with the scent of her own blood. The pup crawled toward her, crying softly. She picked it up and pressed it against her chest. Its heartbeat was wild, too fast, like something trapped between life and death. From deep inside the ruin of the giant's body came a whisper. A woman's voice, old and distant. "Protect her, for the mountain remembers." Then silence. Victoria looked up. Through the broken roof she could see the red moon fading behind clouds. For the first time in 200 years, she felt the castle breathe again, slow, uneven, like a wounded animal. But the sound that came next froze the moment. A heavy step far below the ground, as if something even larger was moving in the dark foundations of Hollowveil. The storm had ended, but the silence that followed was worse. It was the kind of silence that listens. Lady Victoria Gravesend stood alone in the hall. The giant's ashes still smoked on the floor, their smell thick and metallic. The air shimmered with heat and cold at the same time. She carried the white wolf pup to her throne and laid it on a torn velvet cushion. Its fur was damp with blood, its chest rising and falling in quick, uneven breaths. She brushed her hand over its head. "You brought fire into my home," she whispered, "and now it breathes." The words echoed back at her softly at first, then slightly changed. "Now it breathes." Her eyes flicked toward the shadows. The voice had not come from her own lips. The torches along the walls flickered. The flames leaned toward her, as if pulled by some hidden wind. Then she saw it, thin, red lines sliding down the stone columns. Not cracks, not water, blood. The walls were bleeding. It began slow, one line, then another, until the hall glistened like wet flesh. Drops fell onto the floor and spread into small, pulsing pools. Victoria stepped back. "Enough," she commanded. Her voice carried the power that once froze armies. But Hollowveil did not listen. From somewhere deep in the castle came a sound, a heavy groan, like a great beast turning in its sleep. The ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. The pup woke with a cry, eyes glowing again. The bleeding walls pulsed to the same rhythm as its heartbeat. Victoria turned toward the far end of the hall. There, the great portrait of her family, all long dead, began to warp. The faces twisted, eyes leaking red tears that ran down the canvas. Her father's painted mouth opened. "You broke the oath," it whispered. The voice was not just in the air, it was inside her head. Victoria pressed her fingers to her temples. "I broke nothing. You gave me nothing but this curse." The portrait's eyes rolled, and the mouth stretched too wide to be human. "Then you shall drink from your own walls until the end of time." The painting caught fire, but the flames did not rise, they spread downward, crawling along the floor like snakes made of light. The pup yelped, and Victoria scooped it into her arms, leaping backward just as the fire reached the throne. The marble cracked. The flames hissed, turning blue, then vanished. Smoke coiled around her like mist. She could smell iron and salt, fresh blood, too strong, too real. She looked down. The blood that ran from the walls was moving toward her feet, dragging itself across the floor like it was alive. It gathered in a circle around her boots, trembling, forming a shape, a ring of symbols glowing faintly gold. The same marking she had seen when the giant died. The pup whimpered. Its eyes rolled back, showing only white. Then a sound faint but clear came from beneath the floor. A heartbeat. Not hers, not the pup's. Something larger, something ancient. It was coming from below. Victoria bent low, pressing her ear to the ground. The heartbeat grew louder, slow, deep, shaking the stone with each pulse. Thud, thud, thud. The castle itself was alive. The floor cracked beneath her. Thin fingers of smoke rose from the gaps. The air turned freezing cold. She stepped back, holding the pup close, and whispered, "What are you?" A whisper answered this time from everywhere, from the walls, from the ceiling, from the very blood that still slid down the stones. "We are what you kept buried." The sound of chains followed. Old, deep, rusted, and then, from the far end of the hall, came the slow dragging of something heavy. A shape moved in the darkness. Victoria turned, eyes glowing like coals, her voice low. "Show yourself." The shadow paused. Then it stepped forward, a tall figure, pale as frost, eyes black as caves. It smiled with her own face. "You saved the beast," it said softly. "Now you will feed it." Victoria's reflection, her shadow self, reached out a hand, and the torches all went out. Darkness poured over Hollowveil like a flood. The moment the torches died, the castle forgot the difference between walls and shadows. Lady Victoria Gravesend stood in the black, her eyes glowing red like coals under ash. The white pup in her arms trembled and whimpered. The air was too still, too thick, like something was breathing inside the stone. Then she heard her own footsteps behind her. Slow, deliberate, following perfectly. She turned. No one stood there. But the echo did not fade. It answered each step she took, as if the castle itself mocked her movements. A thin voice slid through the dark. It was familiar, soft, cold, and hers. "Victoria." She spun again. Before her stood a mirror she had never seen before, tall, silver, and dripping with condensation as though it had been breathing. Her reflection looked back with a smile that did not belong to her. The same pale skin, the same crimson eyes, but around its mouth was blood. "You forgot me," the reflection said. "I am what you left in the forest." The pup growled, low and defiant. The sound echoed around the hall, and was answered by 100 small whispers from the shadows. Some sounded like children, some like wolves, some like Victoria herself. She raised a hand. The air split with a sharp crack as she threw a wave of force toward the glass. The mirror did not break, it rippled like a pool of dark water. Her reflection stepped out of it. It was solid, real, every detail of her duplicated except for its eyes, which were black and hollow. It spoke again, its voice shaking the floor. "You should have let it die." Then it moved. Fast. The two figures collided. Claws against claws, teeth against teeth. Each time Victoria struck, Her double broke into dust and smoke only to reform behind her. The castle howled. The blood on the walls rose in thin streams, floating like strings drawn to the fight. The pup barked sharply. A pulse of gold light flashed from its body and threw both vampires apart. Victoria hit a column. Her shadow, self, hit the ceiling and stuck there, hanging like a bat, laughing. "You cannot keep the light," it said. "Everything you touch turns tonight." Victoria rose slowly, blood trickling from her lip. She looked up, expressionless. "Then let night devour you first." She lifted her hand. The torches along the walls burst back into flame, this time burning blue. The firelight reflected off the mirror, splitting into 1,000 shards of color. The reflection screamed. The sound was not a voice but the noise of glass grinding against bone. It fell from the ceiling, landing in front of her, body twisting as if its bones were backward. It crawled toward her on all fours, its mouth open too wide, the jaw snapping as it spoke in her exact tone. "You cannot kill what you already are." Victoria drove her hand through its chest. Black smoke poured out, burning her skin. The thing smiled one last time, then fell apart like ashes in water. For a moment, she thought it was over. Then, she looked at the mirror. The glass was empty, no reflection. Her face was gone. Only the pup looked back at her through the glass. Its eyes no longer gold but crimson. Behind that reflection, in the depth of the mirror, something huge moved, a shadow that filled the entire surface, breathing slowly, waiting. The glass rippled once, and a deep voice spoke from inside it. "The king has woken." The mirror shattered, and the castle howled like a living creature being torn apart. Hollowveil had stopped pretending to be a home. The corridors that once obeyed their mistress now stretched like veins, twisting deeper into the mountain. Every wall breathed, every shadow murmured. Lady Victoria Gravesend held the white pup close to her chest. Its fur was cold, damp with the sweat of fear. The crimson glow in its eyes dimmed and brightened with each of her heartbeats, as if the creature had begun to feed on her instead. The air stank of wet stone and blood. Somewhere under her feet, a slow pounding continued. Thud, thud, thud. It had rhythm. It had purpose. It was a heartbeat. She followed the sound down a staircase that had not existed the day before. Each step was slick, carved from dark rock that seemed to move when she blinked. The deeper she went, the thicker the air became until breathing felt like drinking ash. Halfway down, a whisper rose from the walls. "You kept us sleeping. You fed us silence. Now we dream with open eyes." She ignored it. The words belonged to Hollowveil. The castle was nothing more than the grave of things she had killed to buy her centuries of life. At the bottom of the stairs, a vast chamber waited round, low-ceilinged, its roof held by pillars shaped like human figures. Their mouths were open as if screaming, and from their stone eyes leaked thick black water that steamed when it touched the ground. In the center of the room was a pit. From it came the heartbeat. Victoria approached slowly. The pup squirmed in her arms, whining. When she looked down, its body was trembling, light pushing through its skin like fire under ice. "Easy," she whispered. "Do not answer it." The pit breathed. The air around it sank inward, carrying the smell of smoke and iron. Words rose from the dark like bubbles. "Blood of night, keeper of the gate, return what you stole." Victoria's jaw tightened. "I owe you nothing." "Then we take her." Hands gray, enormous, emerged from the pit. They were made of rock, but moved like flesh. Fingers the size of tree trunks clawed at the floor, dragging up the rest of the shape attached to them. The Mountain King had not fully risen yet. Only his shoulders and head broke the surface, eyes burning like furnaces. The sound of his breath turned the dripping water into steam. "You should have left the forest red," he said. His voice shook the chamber. "Now its heart beats here." The pup slipped from her arms. It hit the floor and yelped. the cry echoing like thunder. Golden light burst from its body, painting the walls with strange runes. The statues of the pillars began to scream. Victoria staggered backward, shielding her face. The light burned even through her eyelids. When she looked again, the pit had closed, but the voice remained, whispering through every stone in the room. "We are not gone. We are underneath." The runes on the floor pulsed 3 times, matching the sound of the heartbeat, then faded. The pup lay motionless, eyes open but unseeing. Victoria knelt, touching its head. "No," she said quietly. "Not yet." The castle answered her with laughter, deep, metallic, echoing from everywhere. The pillars cracked. Dust fell in soft clouds. Victoria picked up the small body and climbed the stairs. The laughter followed her all the way up, growing softer but never stopping, until it was impossible to tell whether it came from behind or from inside her skull. At the top of the stairs, she paused. The mirror in the great hall was gone, but where it had hung was now a door, black, smooth, and pulsing like skin. A single phrase drifted from it, quiet and cold. "He is awake, and he remembers your name." Victoria bared her teeth, blood running down her chin. "Then let him speak it to my face." She pushed the door open, and Hollowveil swallowed her whole. The door closed behind Lady Victoria Gravesend with a sound like a slow exhale. The air inside the chamber tasted of rust and smoke. The walls pulsed, as if the room itself were one vast organ, beating in time with the rhythm that had haunted her since the forest. She stood at the edge of a wide hall, lit by veins of molten light running through the floor. The heat burned, yet she felt cold. The white wolf pup hung limply in her arms, its fur dim, its eyes faint flickers of gold struggling to stay open. Ahead, a vast shape shifted in the gloom. It was the size of the castle itself, carved from the same stone that built Hollowveil. The Mountain King was no longer trapped below. His body had risen through the heart of the fortress, fusing with it. Towers were his ribs. Corridors were his veins. He opened his eyes. Fire rolled behind them. "Little vampire," he rumbled. "You dig in my flesh and call it home." Victoria's boots stuck in the hot dust. She lifted her chin. "Then I live inside your wound." The king laughed. The sound broke chandeliers and sent a storm of ash spiraling through the air. "You think yourself, hunter. You are hunger wrapped in skin." She stepped forward. "And you are rot that learned to speak." The air thickened. The molten veins brightened until the floor glowed like the inside of a furnace. The pup began to twitch. Golden light leaked from its mouth with every breath. The king stretched a hand the size of a hill toward her. Each finger was a pillar of smoking rock. "Give it back, the heart that keeps the mountain alive." Victoria's fangs slid from her gums. "She is not yours. She is not yours either. She is what your kind buried when the world was young." The ground shook. Shards of red stone rained from the ceiling. The veins under the floor split open, releasing gouts of fire that formed the shapes of screaming faces. Hollowveil itself was dying, crumbling as the king pulled more of his body through its walls. Victoria laid the pup gently on the ground. "If you want her," she said, "you'll have to dig through me." She tore her claws across her palm. Black blood dripped to the floor, hissing where it fell. The smell of iron filled the chamber. The Mountain King's voice grew quieter, almost tender. "You cannot kill what feeds you, child of the grave." Victoria smiled a dead thing's smile. "Then I'll starve." She pressed her bleeding hand to the floor. Her blood spread, black meeting gold, the two colors fighting as they touched. Light exploded upward, throwing her backward. The pup screamed a long human sound and the runes returned, brighter, sharper. The king roared, "You will burn." His hand came down, crushing the center of the hall. Stone shattered. Fire poured over everything. Victoria rose through the smoke, Her cloak burned away, her skin white as ash. The blood on her hand blazed. She leapt, driving that burning hand into the giant's wrist. Her power crawled up his arm like frost, turning molten rock to brittle stone. The king bellowed, tearing at his own limb. Cracks spread across his chest. Light burst through them like veins of sunlight under skin. The pup floated in mid-air now, body stretched with light. It howled once, the sound so sharp that the ceiling split. The heart of the castle. The king's heart was exposed. A sphere of stone wrapped in fire, pulsing slowly. Victoria landed before it. She looked back at the small creature that had become her curse and her weapon. "Do it," she whispered. The pup's eyes turned white. It opened its mouth and released all the light it held. The beam hit the heart. The Mountain King screamed, the sound rolling out across the world. Flames died. The walls began to collapse. His body crumbled layer by layer until the fire inside him went out and only falling dust remained. Victoria stood amid the ruin, the pup silent in her arms. The heartbeat had stopped, but before the last echo faded, a whisper rose from beneath the stones. "If the mountain dies, where will its shadows go?" The floor split again, thin cracks spreading like a web, and cold wind rushed upward from the void below. Victoria looked down into that darkness. "Then let them follow me." She stepped forward and fell into the lightless pit. She fell for what felt like hours. No air, no sound, only the pull of the pit and the faint echo of her own heart beating against eternity. When she finally hit the ground, it was soft, not earth, but ash. It clung to her skin like cold dust from a burned body. The white pup lay beside her, unmoving. Its fur was no longer white. It had turned gray, the color of smoke. Lady Victoria Gravesend pushed herself up. Around her there was no sky, no ceiling, no horizon. The world below the mountain was a hollow space, filled with mist that moved like breath. The ground trembled every few seconds, as if something far larger still turned in its sleep. She whispered to herself, "So this is the shadow the king feared." The pup twitched. Its eyes opened completely black now. It didn't look at her. It looked through her, toward the mist. From that fog came a whisper, quiet as a sigh. "You broke the heart. Now you walk inside it." Shapes began to move in the mist thin, crooked silhouettes dragging themselves across the ash. They were people once, or things that pretended to be. Their faces were hollow, eyes wide and shining with faint gold. Victoria stood, the weight of the silence pressing on her chest. "I have seen ghosts," she said aloud. "You will not frighten me." The nearest figure stopped. Its mouth stretched open until it split the face in two. "We are not ghosts," it said. "We are your echoes." Her own voice, the exact same tone, the exact same breath. Dozens more turned their heads toward her, mouths opening and closing in perfect unison, each one whispering fragments of her own past. The names of the dead she had killed, the prayers she had ignored, the laughter she had not felt in centuries. Victoria's fangs showed. "Then die again." She moved faster than thought. Her claws ripped through the nearest shadow, tearing it apart. But the mist swallowed the pieces, and when it cleared, the figure stood whole again. "We cannot die. You brought us here." Behind her, the pup howled. The sound rippled through the world, scattering the mist for an instant, and she saw it. Far away, rising from the black plain like a mountain of bones, was a throne made from the bodies of the same creatures. On it sat something vast, still half-formed, made of smoke and flame, the ghost of the Mountain King, or what was left of him. It spoke without moving its mouth. "Even gods rot when they fall." Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "And yet, you still breathe." "Because you do." The ground split under her feet. Black fire poured upward, curling around her body like chains. The pup barked once, and the fire recoiled, hissing. Its eyes glowed again, not red this time, but white. The light pushed the mist away, and for a moment the hollow world beneath the mountain looked endless. At its center, the dead king's heart hung suspended above the throne, cracked open, but still pulsing faintly. "You carry the rest of it," the king murmured. "My last breath is in your blood. You think you are free, but you are the last door I will ever open." Victoria's skin burned where the chains touched her. She could feel something inside her chest, answering that heartbeat, a rhythm that wasn't hers. She looked at the pup. Its fur now shimmered between white and black, like smoke caught in wind. "Little one," she said softly, "if I am the door, then you must be the key." It looked up at her, expression unreadable, then turned its head toward the suspended heart. The air filled with light. Every shadow screamed. The throne cracked. The world shook like it was dying again. Victoria fell to her knees, covering her face as blinding white engulfed everything. When the light dimmed, she was alone. The mist was gone. The king's voice was gone. Only silence, deep and cold. The pup stood beside her. Its eyes were white, and a thin crown of golden fire hovered over its head. It stared at her and spoke in a voice that was not human, not beast, not God. "The heart is dead, but something else must beat." Then it pressed its small paw against her chest. Her heart, long silent, began to move. Once, twice, she gasped. The first breath in centuries, and the air tore through her lungs like knives. The pup stepped back. "Now you are the mountain," it said. Victoria looked around. The mist was forming again, rising from the cracks in the ground, wrapping around her legs like smoke from a burning temple. "Then, I will make sure nothing climbs it again." She lifted her hand, and the shadows began to twist, drawn toward her, pulled into her body one by one. Each scream echoed for miles, but she did not stop. When the last shadow vanished, only she remained, Lady Victoria, alone in a dead world of ash, her eyes now glowing with both gold and blood-red light. Above her, the faintest sound of rain began. The first rain that Hollowveil had heard in 1,000 years. The first drops struck the ash like tears on old parchment, soft, hesitant, unreal. Lady Victoria Gravesend lifted her face to the black sky and felt the water burn her skin. It was not rain. It was the mountain's blood. Around her, the colorless world began to shift. The mist rose higher, curling into towers, arches, and broken bridges. The underworld was rebuilding itself, echoing Hollowveil as it had once stood above. She could feel it now, the slow throb inside her chest, that unnatural heartbeat she had stolen. It answered every pulse in the stone. Wherever she walked, the ground trembled slightly, as if recognizing its new master. The white pup, no longer white, walked beside her. Its paws left prints of light that smoldered for a moment before fading. When it spoke, the voice was quiet but carried through the endless hall. "You took the heart, now you carry the mountain's hunger." "I was hunger long before I met your kind," she said. "Then you will understand its curse." They climbed what used to be stairs but now resembled the inside of veins, walls damp and warm, the sound of blood whispering behind them. The further they went, the more the path tilted upward, leading toward the dim glow above. The walls began to quiver. Faces formed in the stone, hundreds of them, some human, some monstrous, all whispering. They were the memories of the creatures she had destroyed, burned into the mountain's body. Murderer, thief, queen of dust. She ignored them until one voice, low and heavy, spoke her true name. Victoria. It was her mother's face, formed of dark rock and ash. Its eyes leaked molten tears. "You promised to rest, my child." Her breath caught. "You were ashes before I was born, and still you found me." The face sighed. then cracked and melted into the wall. The pup glanced up. The dead remember better than the living. Let them remember, she said, her tone flat. I will not. At the top of the passage, light broke through a faint orange shimmer, the last glow of the burning mountain. She pushed through a narrow opening and stepped into the ruins of Hollowveil. The castle was half buried in black rock. Towers leaned at angles that defied logic. Streams of molten blood ran down the walls, pooling in the courtyard where the giant had fallen. Above, the sky was bruised red and gold. A sun she had never seen hung there pale and sickly, pulsing like an open wound. The pup sat beside her. This is the world you saved. Victoria looked around. Every tree in the forest beyond the walls had turned to ash, but in the distance, shapes moved, creatures of smoke and stone crawling toward the castle. The shadows of the mountain were climbing back to their mother. She turned to the pup. If I carry the heart, then I carry its prison too. Then you must choose, it said. Rule or end. She smiled faintly, though there was no warmth in it. End is a kind of rule. She stepped forward, onto the cracked stones of the courtyard. The ground shuddered in recognition. The molten streams began to flow toward her, winding around her boots, climbing her legs. The pup barked once sharp, warning, but she didn't stop. The liquid reached her hands, her throat, her face. Instead of burning, it sank into her skin, disappearing. The sky darkened further. The red sun blinked once and went out. When the light returned, Hollowveil was whole again, but different. The towers glistened like wet stone. The windows wept crimson, and the air vibrated with the rhythm of a living body. Victoria stood at the highest balcony. Her skin glowed faintly beneath the pale moonlight. Veins of gold and black moved under it. The pup sat beside her, silent now, watching. You are no longer vampire, it said quietly. No, she agreed. I am what waits after the feeding. Below them, the forest moved again, trees regrowing, but made of bone and ash. The river beyond glowed faintly red. From every direction, creatures crawled toward the mountain that was once a castle. Hollowveil beat once. Then again, the sound rolled across the world like thunder. Victoria turned her gaze to the horizon, where the first lights of morning struggled to rise but never reached the sky. The world will come, the pup said. She smiled, thin and sharp. Then let it climb. Her eyes glowed brighter, the color of dying suns, and with that, the mountain began to bleed anew, thick streams pouring from its sides, spreading across the valley like rivers of shadow. Each drop that touched the ground gave birth to something new, half human, half stone, each carrying her face. The kingdom of the mountain had begun. The world had forgotten dawn. Only the pulse of the mountain kept time now. Lady Victoria Gravesend stood where sky once lived, upon the highest tower of her reborn castle. Wind no longer touched her. Air avoided her. The valley below was a sea of red fog, breathing in rhythm with her chest. Every heartbeat of hers shook the earth. Rivers moved when she blinked. The bones of the forest grew into black spires that reached for the bleeding clouds. And from those clouds rained the shadows of men, ghosts made flesh again, bound to her will. They called her name in one voice that never stopped. Victoria, Victoria, Queen of the Endless Vein. Yet the sound did not please her. It scraped inside her skull like chains across stone. Beside her sat the wolf pup, no longer a pup, no longer a wolf. Its shape changed with every breath, now fur, now flame, now mist. Only the eyes remained constant, pale and knowing. You made your throne, it said. Does it taste like freedom? She looked down at her hands. The veins under her skin glowed faintly gold, but when she clenched her fists, they bled black. Freedom is just another hunger, she said. And hunger always returns. The pup tilted its head. Then what will you feed it? Her eyes drifted toward the horizon. Beyond the valley, the ocean was rising not with water, but with light. A pale glow crept over the land, slow and unstoppable. It was not the Sunday. It was something else, something older than her curse. A voice rolled with the tide. Return what was borrowed. The ground trembled. The red fog shrank away from the approaching light, hissing as it touched it. Victoria felt the heartbeat inside her chest falter for the first time. The pulse of the mountain grew faint. The world itself was demanding to breathe again. The pup stood, its form solidifying into a creature of pure white fire. The world does not want a queen, it said. It wants a witness. She turned toward it. Then it shall have one. She lifted her hand. The sky cracked open. Every shadow she had ever created screamed and flew upward, forming a spiral around her like a black storm. They merged into her body until she was little more than a silhouette of flame and bone. The light from the horizon touched her feet first. It burned, but not like fire. It burned like memory. She saw the faces of every soul she had taken, each one turning away as the light passed through them. If this ends, she whispered, then let it end seeing. She stepped off the tower. The ground below melted into light. The mountain's blood turned white. The valley filled with silence. The heartbeat stopped. When the light faded, Hollowveil was gone. Only a plain of pale stone remained, smooth and endless, like the inside of a healed wound. At its center lay a single crimson flower, its petals shaped like tiny hearts. Beside it, a small wolf with golden eyes slept peacefully, breathing the wind that had returned. And when night came again, a true night, dark and quiet, no one spoke her name, but in every storm that rolled across the mountains, the rain carried a whisper that no ear could forget. She ended what we began.